Here's a fun cuff bangle that I like to make. You can just make it with coloured wires, or you can obviously add beads, semi-precious chips. Here's one with chips. You can use anything you've got to hand to wire on to the framework and structure. So here's one I've wired around the beads. So I've put the beads on and then wired around them. And you can use any colour palette of your choice, so it's great for leftover beads that you've got in your stash. So we're going to start off by creating the framework. So that's what we need to make first, is the structure and framework of the piece, and then it's completely up to you what you do with it. Now I'm using 1.6mm aluminium wire because it's very easy to work with, but you can use any wire of your choice. As long as it's about, I would say, 1 mil. And I'm cutting about an arm's length, but the length you need is really dependent on the size of the cuff that you're making. So you want to find the center of the length of wire. So put the two ends together, fold it in two, and if you have a mandrel, you can use that as the height of the bangle that you want, or the cuff that you want. So that can have a rounded end. Or if you want, you could also create a square end or a flat end. So that would be, here I'm going to show you with my flat nose pliers, I'm creating an angle in the wire. So you bend it past where you want it to sit, and that creates more of an angle. So push it past the point of where you want it, and then just flatten the end, and that's how you get the sort of square end. And now we need to make these two projecting wires sort of run parallel to each other. So if you hold one of the wires at one end and then grip the other end with your flat nose pliers, and you've seen me do this before, you grip it and you pull and you twist, pull and twist away. So you're pulling and twisting away, and that is strengthening and work hardening the fibers, or the wire, so that it creates a straightened wire, but it also, the manipulation creates a much firmer wire as well. It manipulates it to be firm. So that's what you need to do to get them sort of to be much straighter. So just spend a bit of time straightening out the two wires so that they sit like two tram lines together, sort of parallel together. Now we need to shape it. So if you can find something cylindrical to wrap it round, this is an old Bangle mandrel that I have. You can see it's been well hammered. You could use, a rolling pin. You could use anything that's cylindrical that you can wrap around that will be the right shape and size for your wrist. So wrap that around to create that circular cylindrical shape. I'm just hammering that square end just so that it gives it a bit of work hardening. And once you've got the shape and the size and the dimension, you can then, you can't have spiky ends to your bangle, so you could create just little circles. You could create spirals there, you can create geometric shapes there. Of course you can put another bar across. You could use one of the wires and bring it across to, you can do anything really. It's, I don't want to feed you with so many options that you get you get confused, but I'll show you this version, which is just spiraling the ends and making, foreshortening it at this stage, because I have a bit too much wire. So you can keep curling them round until you get it to the actual size. And I'm just going to create a little bend just after the spiral to create that shape that I want at the end of my bangle. So put it back onto the cylinder that you've shaped your bangle on, because you probably have misshaped it a little bit by manipulating it. So get that round on your cylindrical bangle mandrel and keep hammering it a little bit and shaping it, because you want to do that before you start beading. So if it's still not quite right, just, keep tweaking it and hammering it. And if you have, in fact, a steel bangle mandrel, that's even better. But I don't expect you to have that if you've just started wire work. So once you've got that structure and framework, I'm going to use 0.4 silver plated copper wire to make a base sort of framework or wired base before I put my beads on. You can use any wire you have to hand. So if you have 0.6 millimeter, if you have 0.8, anything that you have to hand. But I find using a finer wire at this stage is easier. So I'm going to wire the center to the center of my bangle frame, and then move it down to the opposite side, because what I'm trying to do is keep that gap, because you see the ends are open, so I want to maintain that gap by wiring it open. So you keep going backwards and forwards, wrapping it completely around the top and the bottom of the bangle to secure it and connect it. And I'm just going to go right to those spiral ends to keep the space and keep it open. Obviously, you don't have to keep it open. You can bring those two spirals together so that they become like a sort of fishtail or mermaid tail. So again, the design of the bangle is completely up to you. So don't feel you have to maintain that space. But I wanted on this particular one to show you the cuff with a sort of even framework. So I've used one end of the wire, wiring it to one side, and now I'm moving the rest of the wire, the thin fine wire, to the other side, the closed end. So just go up and down, backwards and forwards, no particular method to do this, because you're not going to see it as a pattern. It's really just giving you a structure or a base, sort of like a base coat of wire to this frame. And when you run out, which you probably will like me, you can just add another length in wherever you last left off. So I'm just cut another length, and then I start connecting it where I finished off, and then I just go back to going up and down, backwards and forwards, filling in the gap. So if you want this to wire your bangle just with wires, no beads, obviously you will carry on doing this with more and more wires and building up, the framework. But here we have it. I've now finished. I've made sure all the ends are flattened. I need to reshape it because I've probably misshaped it a bit. And the next thing is just tweaking those wires. And what that does, any loose wires now will, get tightened up, and also they'll be work hardened. And I also think that these little tweaks and sort of zigzags in the framework make it far more interesting. It gives a sort of nice aesthetic look to the bangle rather than straight wires. So go all the way around the cuff and just do little tweaks and twists around these wires, and you can spend as long as you like doing that, and until it feels nice and firm and looks great. And then just gently hammer the ends. Use your nylon head of your hammer as well, your nylon hammer, to carry on with the hammering to make sure that their sort of work hardened structure is there, and you've got a framework to start beading on. Now I've decided to also turn those spirals in. Of course, you don't have to do that. You can keep them going outwards, but for my particular design, I'm going to keep them turned in. So you can do that at this stage. Just bend them in and get them as you want them. So this is all about the structure and framework at this stage. Get that as you want it. And if I've turned them in, I need to give them a little bit of a hammering, and that work hardens them, because that point of the bangle is going to get quite a lot of wear and tear if it's opened up and closed. If you have a steel mandrel, this is the ideal. If you've been doing wire work for a bit, you might have invested in one. And that is great for hammering these ends onto. And it really work hardens and flattens and spreads the wire much quicker than, any other cylindrical shape that you're going to bend if it's, plastic or wood or anything like that. So because it's tapered, I turned it over and do it, on both sides. So now we're ready for beading. So choose a palette of beads. I've got some sort of mixed wooden beads that I've found in my stash, and I thought I'll do a sort of rustic look. Seed beads and bugle beads are really useful too, because you can fill in any gaps when you're beading, if you have any gaps. And I'm using the 0.4 millimeter wire again to bead on all my beads. So you will need fine wire if you're using semi-precious chips, but if you're using chunkier beads, of course you can use chunkier wire. So again, no rules on this. So connect the wire to the framework, and then this is the simple bit. You're just going to be threading beads onto the wire, and you'll thread as many as will fit along within that framework. So you just pick them up as if you're picking them up. The wire becomes the end of a needle, and fill the gap. I mean, you don't have to fill the gap. You could just put one bead on and then move on and keep adding just bead after bead, especially if they're bigger beads. But I'm going to fill the top to the bottom, so one, go along the height, and then connect it. So secure it, the whole wire, secure it round the top, and that holds those beads in place. And now I want to move the wire on so that, I leave a bit of a space between that row of beads before I put in my next row of beads. So again, pick up some more, anything that, any colors of your choice. I quite like using a mixed palette for these cuffs, because you sort of, whoops, those bounced off. It's really difficult actually to film with my phone camera in front of my hands, because I can't really see what I'm doing. So, but you can see the gist of it. I'm literally just feeding beads onto the wire, bringing them into the space and the gaps that go from one side of the cuff to the other, and then I just keep binding them in. So I didn't want to make you watch this torturous sort of threading process. So I've threaded everything, and now I'm just tweaking the wires in between and making sure that my structure is still firm and strong, and no spiky ends around the rims where I finished off wires and put new wires on. Just check there's no spiky ends. Also check that if it's misshaped, put it back onto your cylindrical mandrel and check that the shape is still good. And there you have a finished bangle ready to wear, and you can see it's perfectly fine too. It's got nice firm structure because the beads have given it that. And these are great for gifts, great for using up your stash. And if it misshapes, just put it on a cylindrical shaping tool again, and there you have it. So you'll find this in one of my books, Hammered Wire Jewelry. I also have this project, and there I do it just with coloured wires. So you can use a selection of coloured wires. So you'll find this project in there if you have that book already. You can do it with different coloured wires, different little gemstones. So please do check out that book. If I think it's on Amazon, you'll find it there. So here's a sample of that as well, just using whatever coloured wires you have to hand, just wrapping them up and down and tweaking them along and adding as many as you want. And here are a couple of more samples that will give you inspiration. Many thanks for watching.